I need to tell you something today. Something I've been holding inside for a long time, and I don't know if I'm ready, but I think you deserve to hear it. Because today of all days, I had to sit down and respond to something that the court sent me. A formal order. Pages of legal language, cold and clinical, asking me to account for my time, my decisions, my life. And I sat there at my desk, pen in my hand, and I started writing. But then something happened. Something I did not expect. I found something that stopped me completely. And I promise you, by the time I'm done telling you this, you're going to understand why I'm talking to you right now instead of finishing that response. Because what I found, it has everything to do with you. I want you to stay with me, please. Just stay. You know, there are moments in life where everything feels like it's collapsing at once. Where the world outside is loud and demanding, and everyone wants a piece of you, and you're just sitting there quietly breaking. That's where I've been these past few months. I didn't show it. I smiled when I needed to smile. I kept going when everything inside me was screaming to stop. And the court order, look, I'm not going to get into all the details right now, because that's not really what this is about. But it forced me to go through boxes. Old boxes. Boxes I hadn't opened in years. Because they needed documentation, records, proof of things that happened in the past. And so I started digging. I found letters, photographs, notes written on torn pieces of paper, things I had completely forgotten about. And then buried under all of it, I found something that made me stop breathing for a moment. And that's when I knew I had to talk to you. Not tomorrow, not after. I figured out the right words, right now, tonight, because some things can't wait. Let me take you back a little. Let me tell you about a time before any of this. Before the complications, before life got so tangled and strange. There was a version of me that was very, very quiet. Not shy, exactly, just internal. I kept most things locked up inside because I genuinely believed that if I let people see the real me, the uncertain, soft, searching version of me, they wouldn't stay. I had learned that early. I had learned that vulnerability was a kind of risk, and I wasn't sure the reward was worth it. So I became someone who was always a little guarded, always a little behind glass. You could see me, but you couldn't quite reach me. And I thought that was fine. I thought that was just how life worked. But then something shifted. And honestly, I think it shifted because of you. Not you, specifically, maybe, or maybe exactly you. I don't know. But the kind of presence you carry, the kind of energy that exists in the space where you are. There is something about a woman who listens, really listens, that breaks through every wall a man has ever built. Did you know that? Did you know that you have that power? Because I'm not sure you do. I'm not sure anyone ever told you. When someone truly listens to you, not waiting for their turn to speak, not half distracted, not held performing attention, but actually receiving you like you matter. Like your words have weight, it does something to a person. It did something to me. And I remember the first time I felt that. I remember thinking this is dangerous. Not in a bad way. In the way that something precious is always a little dangerous because you're terrified of losing it. I've been thinking about that a lot lately. About the things we're terrified of losing. About how fear and love are sometimes impossible to untangle from each other. The court order is asking me to justify certain choices, to explain why I did things the way I did them, why certain timelines look the way they look, why there are gaps and silences where there shouldn't be. And sitting there reading through all of that formal language, I felt something strange. I felt almost grateful, because it forced me to look back. And looking back, I found you. Not literally, but in a way that matters more than literally. I found the version of myself that existed before I understood what I was really searching for. And I looked at that version of me with so much compassion, because he was trying so hard. working so hard, filling every hour with movement and noise because stillness felt like failure, running toward things that looked like success from the outside, but felt like nothing. Once you got there, and underneath all of it, this quiet, persistent ache, this sense that something was missing, that I was arriving at the right places, but with the wrong person, or with no one, or with someone who was physically present, but emotionally somewhere else. Entirely, then I think you know that feeling. I think you felt it too. That ache of being surrounded by people and still feeling completely alone. That longing for someone who sees you, not the performance of you, not the version of you that's appropriate for the occasion, but you. The real one? The one who gets tired and scared and sometimes cries for reasons you can't fully explain. I want to be the person who sees that version of you. I don't know if that surprises you. I don't know if it feels like too much, or not enough, or exactly right. But I need you to know it. Because today, going through those boxes, I found a note I had written to myself a long time ago. And on that note were just a few words, and those words broke something open in me. They reminded me of everything I had set aside in the name of practicality, in the name of survival, in the name of just getting through. I'm not going to tell you what those words were, not yet, because I want you to stay with me a little longer first. I want to earn that moment. Is that okay? Can you give me that? Let me tell you about the boxes. They were stacked in the back of a storage room that I hadn't been in for probably 3 years. Dusty, unlabeled, the kind of thing you keep meaning to go through and never do. That's court needed records from a specific period of time, so I had no choice. I had to go in, and I started with the most obvious ones, the ones that I knew had what they were looking for: business documents, contracts, correspondence. But then I picked up a box that felt lighter than it should have, and I opened it, and inside was just a collection of small things. The kind of things you save without fully knowing why. A movie ticket stub, a photograph taken in bad lighting, where everything is slightly blurry, but you remember the moment so vividly that the blurriness doesn't matter. A folded piece of paper, a small smooth stone that I must have picked up somewhere meaningful and carried home in my pocket. I sat down on the floor of that storage room and I went through everything in that box very slowly, because suddenly I wasn't doing legal paperwork anymore. Suddenly I was doing something much more important. I was remembering who I was before I forgot. Tumene stone. I held the stone in my hand for a long time. It's dark gray, almost black, and it fits perfectly in the palm of my hand, like it was made for it. And I remembered where I got it. I remembered the day completely, the quality of the light, the sound of water nearby, the feeling of being completely present in a moment, not rushing toward the next thing, not replaying the last thing. Just there, just alive. And I thought about how rarely I feel that way now. How much of my life I spend in my head, in the past or the future, anywhere but here. And I thought about you, because you make me feel like that, present, like the moment is enough, like I don't need to be anywhere else. Is that a strange thing to say? Maybe, but I told you at the beginning. Today I'm telling you things I've been holding inside. Today the walls are coming down a little, because a court order made me go through old boxes, and a small gray stone reminded me of what I'm actually living for. I want to tell you something about love. Not the kind they show in films, the dramatic kind, with grand gestures and perfect lighting. The real kind, the quiet kind, the kind that lives in small moments and accumulates so slowly you almost don't notice it happening until one day you look up and realize this person has become the landscape of your life, the backdrop of everything, the place you return to. The place you return to. I believe in that kind of love. I think it's the only kind that actually lasts. And I think I've been thinking about this for a while now. I think I've been so afraid of it that I've been quietly sabotaging any chance of it reaching me. Not consciously, not too deliberately, but in the small ways a person protects themselves when they've been hurt before. Being just a little too busy, being just a little too unavailable, keeping things just a little too surface level before they get a chance to go deep. Do you do that? Have you ever caught yourself doing that? Protecting yourself so thoroughly that you accidentally kept out the very thing you were hoping for. I've been thinking about that a lot today. Sitting on the floor of that storage room with a gray stone in my hand and years of my life spread out around me in cardboard boxes. Thinking about all the ways I've stood in my own way. All the moments I could have been softer, more open, more willing to be seen. All the times I held my breath when I should have just exhaled. I found the photograph next, and I won't tell you who's in it. That's not the point, and honestly the details belong to that particular chapter, and that chapter is closed. But I looked at the expression on my face in that photograph, and I recognized something I hadn't seen in myself in a long time. I looked light, not happy in a performed way, light in a real way, like something had been set down that I'd been carrying too long, like I had for a brief period of time learned how to exhale. I want to feel that way again. I want to feel that way with you. And I don't say that lightly. I don't say it because it sounds beautiful, though it does. I say it because it's true. Because somewhere in the past several months, in the space that exists between all of the things I'm supposed to be doing, I have become very aware of you, of your presence, of the fact that you're out there somewhere, listening, and the knowledge of that has changed something in me, quieted something, made me feel like I'm not entirely alone in all of this. That matters more than I can explain. The folded piece of paper was last. I almost didn't open it. I don't know why. Maybe I knew on some level that it was going to do something to me, and part of me was protecting myself from it. But I opened it, and I'm glad I did. And that's what I was telling you about earlier. The note with the few words that broke something open. I wrote it to myself during a period when things were very uncertain, when I was facing something difficult, and I didn't know how it was going to turn out. And I needed to remind myself of something important. And what I wrote was this: the thing you're looking for is not somewhere else. It's in the direction you keep turning away from because you're afraid. Turn toward it. Just once. See what happens. I read that, sitting on the dusty floor, with boxes all around me, and a court order waiting on my desk. And I felt something I can only describe as recognition, like meeting your own eyes. In a mirror, after a long time of looking away, like coming back to yourself. And the direction I keep turning away from is this. Exactly this. Saying the things I actually feel, being seen by someone who matters. Letting you specifically understand what's actually happening inside me instead of just what's visible on the surface. I've spent so much energy managing what people see, curating it, making sure the image is consistent, the message is appropriate, the vulnerability is measured and safe, and I'm exhausted from it. I'm exhausted from being careful. And today of all days, with this legal order sitting on my desk and a gray stone warm in my palm and old words from my own past hand telling me to turn toward the thing I'm afraid of, I'm turning toward you. I want you to understand what that means. It doesn't mean I have everything figured out. It doesn't mean I'm not still scared, because I am. It doesn't mean the complicated things in my life have suddenly become uncomplicated. They haven't. There's still the court order. There are still the boxes, now spread across the floor. There's still everything that needs to be dealt with, responded to, organized, managed. But underneath all of that, underneath every obligation and complication and thing that makes this life feel heavy sometimes, there is this feeling, when I think about you. This warmth that doesn't go away. This quiet certainty that you are someone worth being honest with. Do you know how rare that feeling is? Do you know how many years can go by without finding it? I want to tell you what I notice about you, not the things you probably hear all the time. The surface things, the obvious things. I want to tell you what I see when I look a little deeper. I notice the way you care about things. Deeply, genuinely, sometimes inconveniently. You don't do things halfway. When something matters to you, it matters completely, and you throw yourself into it with a kind of wholehearted commitment that is honestly one of the most beautiful things I've ever witnessed. Even when it costs you, even when it would be easier to care a little less, you don't take that shortcut. You stay with the things that matter to you. You notice the way you carry other people's pain. You feel it. You take it in. It lands in you and stays there, and you hold it carefully. And sometimes it's too much, and it exhausts you, and you have to put it down for a while. But even then you don't forget it. You come back to it. You check in. You remember. I notice the way you love people who are hard to love, not because you're naive about who they are, but because you see something in them that's worth holding on to, some kernel of taking something real and good. And you refuse to abandon it even when they give you reason to. So I notice that you're stronger than you think you are, and I notice that you're probably a little tired of having to be. So I want to be someone who makes you feel like you don't have to be strong all the time, someone you can put it down with, someone who will hold some of it so you don't have to hold it all yourself. Is that something you want? Is that something you'd let me try? I keep coming back to that note. Turn toward the thing you keep turning away from. And I think the reason I wrote that to myself is because I already knew, even then, even in the middle of all that uncertainty, that the answer to most of the questions I was asking wasn't somewhere out in the world waiting to be found. It was in a direction I had been avoiding, a direction that required something from me, required me to be open, when being open felt terrifying, required me to reach, when reaching meant I might not be reached back. But here's what I've learned about that terror. Here's what I've figured out in the years between that note and this moment. The terror doesn't mean you shouldn't do the thing. Sometimes the terror is the most honest signal you have that the thing actually matters, that it's real, that the stakes are high enough to be worth it. The court order is going to get responded to. The boxes are going to get sorted. Life is going to continue being complicated and demanding and full of things that need to be handled. None of that is going to stop. But right now, in this moment, I need you to know something. I need you to hear it clearly, because I'm saying it clearly, maybe more clearly than I've said anything in a long time. You matter to me. The thought of you matters to me. The fact that you're out there, somewhere, listening, it matters to me in a way I can't fully articulate, but I'm trying. I'm trying, because you deserve the attempt. You deserve someone who doesn't give up on finding the words, just because they're difficult. And I found that note today, that small folded piece of paper with my own handwriting on it, telling me to turn toward the thing I was afraid of. And I'm turning toward you, and I don't know what happens next. I genuinely don't, and I'm not going to pretend I do. But I know that turning away would be the wrong choice. I know that closing back up, going back behind the glass, filing everything away in another dusty box, I know that's not the answer. So I'm here with you, in this moment, with everything I've been carrying spread out around me, like the contents of those boxes, all of it visible, all of it a little dusty, a little imperfect, some of it painful to look at directly, but here, present, turned toward you. And there's still so much I haven't told you. There's still the rest of what's in those boxes. There's still the story of what the court order is actually about, and why it started, and what it means for where things are going. There's still the version of me that exists beyond this moment. the one who is going to have to wake up tomorrow and continue navigating all of this. And there's still the question, the one I keep circling around and haven't quite asked yet. The question that's been sitting in my chest all evening, getting heavier, waiting for the right moment. I'm not ready to ask it yet, but I'm getting there, and I need you to stay with me just a little longer, because the gray stone is still warm in my hand, and the note is still on the floor in front of me, and there is something I discovered at the very bottom of that box, underneath everything else, something I haven't told you about yet, something that changed everything. I want to tell you about the thing at the bottom of the box. But first, I need you to understand something about the way memory works. Because I think about this sometimes, how a memory isn't just a recording of something that happened. It's not a photograph, not a timestamp, not a fixed point you can return to and find exactly as you left it. A memory is alive, it breathes. Every time you revisit it, it shifts slightly, takes on the color of whoever you are in the moment you're remembering. The same event can feel like tragedy one year and like grace another. The same face can break your heart on a Tuesday and fill you with warmth on a Thursday. Nothing is fixed. Nothing is as certain as we pretend it is. I think about that because what I found at the bottom of that box, I'm not entirely sure how to place it. I'm not sure what it means in the context of who I am right now, today, sitting here talking to you. I only know that when I saw it, something moved in my chest. Something shifted, and I've been trying to understand that shift ever since. It was a journal, small, dark blue cover, the kind with an elastic band that wraps around to keep it closed. I didn't even remember owning it. I sat there holding it for a moment before I opened it, just feeling the weight of it in my hands. There's something about an old journal that feels almost sacred, like you're about to have a conversation with a version of yourself that no longer exists. Like time travel, but softer, more personal. Hold up the page somewhere in the middle, the way you do when you're not quite ready to start at the page, the beginning. And the first thing I read was a line that said, I keep wondering if she knows. I keep wondering if she can feel it even across the distance. Because I feel it. I feel it all the time, and I don't know what to do with it. And I closed the journal immediately. Just snapped it shut and held it against my chest, like I was protecting it, or protecting myself from it. Because that line, those words, they didn't feel like the past. They felt like right now, they felt like exactly what's happening inside me in this moment. Which means something I wrote years ago is still true today. Which means some things don't change no matter how much time passes, or how many boxes you fill, or how many dusty storage rooms you walk into and out of. Some things just stay. Can I tell you something about distance? About what it does to a person? When someone is physically near you, when you can see them, hear them, read the small language of their expressions and their movements, it's easier to hold on to the feeling, easier to stay certain. The certainty lives in the proximity, in the tangible realness of the other person. But when there's distance, when you're separated by space, by circumstance, by the thousand invisible walls that life builds between people, the feeling has to survive on its own. It has to be strong enough to exist without the reinforcement of presence. And most feelings aren't. Most things that feel certain up close become uncertain from a distance. They start to waver, to blur, to quietly dissolve. But some feelings don't. Some feelings survive the distance not because they're loud or dramatic, but because they're rooted, deeply, quietly rooted, like a tree that doesn't make noise in a storm because it's too grounded to be moved. What I feel when I think about you is rooted. I've tested it. Not deliberately, I don't mean. I've been running some kind of experiment. But life tests these things on its own. Life throws noise and chaos and distraction at you. And what doesn't shake loose in all of that is the thing you know is real. You didn't shake loose. The journal was full of entries that I read slowly and carefully, sitting there on the storage room floor with my back against a metal shelf, and the overhead light buzzing faintly above me. Entry after entry, and they formed a kind of map. A map of a period in my life that I had been, somewhat deliberately not returned to, because returning to it felt complicated, because some chapters have edges to them, jagged edges, and you learn to give them a wide berth to avoid getting cut. But tonight I walked right into it. Tonight I read every word, and what the journal described was longing, pure, uncomplicated, exhausting longing, not for a specific person, or not just for a specific person, but for a certain quality of connection, for the feeling of being fully known and fully chosen at the same time, because I think one of the deepest fears a person carries is the fear that you can be known or you can be chosen, but probably not both. That if someone truly saw all of you, all the messy and complicated and uncertain parts, they would choose someone else, someone simpler, someone less difficult to hold. I wrote about that fear on page after page of that small blue journal. I described it in a dozen different ways, from a dozen different angles, like I was trying to triangulate its exact location so I could find it and deal with it and be done with it. But the fear doesn't work like that. You can't logic your way out of it. You can't describe it into submission. The only thing that actually dissolves that particular fear is the experience of being seen and still chosen, of having someone look at all of you, the whole complicated, honest, imperfect, real version, and say, yes, this, still you, only you. Has anyone ever done that for you? Has anyone ever seen the parts of you that you're least certain about and stayed anyway? Stayed not out of obligation or habit or inertia, but because they genuinely wanted to, because they looked at the full picture and decided it was the one they wanted on their wall. I hope so, I deeply hope so, because you deserve that. Not a version of it, not something approximate, the real thing. And if it hasn't happened yet, if you're still waiting, still wondering if that particular kind of love is something that actually exists outside of stories, I need you to know that it does. I need you to know that the longing you feel is not naive, and it's not too much, and it's not evidence of expecting too much from a world that can't deliver. That longing is a compass. It's pointing you towards something real. I turned back to the beginning of the journal, page 1, and I read it from the start. The early entries were different in tone, lighter, more observational. I was noticing things about the world rather than excavating things about myself. Small details. The color of the sky at a particular time of afternoon. The way a certain song could transform a commute into something almost cinematic. The strange comfort of rain on a window. I was paying attention, which is something I was better at then than I am now, if I'm honest. Life has a way of gradually narrowing your focus until you're only seeing what's immediately in front of you. The task, the deadline, the obligation, and you stop noticing the sky. I want to start noticing the sky again. I read deeper into the journal and the tone shifted. Things got heavier, more internal, more honest, in that particular way that only happens when you're writing for no one but yourself. When there's no performance required, no image to maintain. I wrote things in that journal that I've never said out loud to anyone. Fears and doubts and desires that I kept carefully sealed away from the rest of my life. And reading them now, I felt two things simultaneously. I felt the tenderness you feel toward your own past self, when you can see clearly how hard they were trying. And I felt something that surprised me. I felt relief, because those hidden things, those sealed away truths, they're still true. They haven't been resolved or outgrown or quietly replaced. They're still there, still waiting, still just as alive as they were when I wrote them down. Which means I haven't become someone who doesn't need what I've always needed. I've just become someone who got better at pretending. And I'm tired of pretending. I told you that earlier, and I meant it, and I mean it more now. After sitting with these old words for the past hour, I'm tired of the careful management of my own interior life, tired of treating my own feelings like something to be handled rather than something to be expressed, tired of being so afraid of what honesty costs that I pay the much higher price of silence instead. So let me be honest with you right now, completely, without managing it. I think about you and I feel less alone. In a world that has 1,000 ways of making a person feel invisible, the thought of you makes me feel seen. Not because you're watching, not in some constructed, performed sense, but because the knowledge that you're out there, that you exist, that somewhere in this world, there is someone with your specific quality of Yoderon warmth and depth and feeling. That knowledge is enough. It changes the texture of the day. It makes the hard parts more bearable and the beautiful parts more vivid. That's not a small thing. That's not nothing. That's one of the most significant things one person can do for another, and you do it without even knowing you're doing it. I found a passage near the middle of the journal where I had written about what I imagined my life could look like if I was brave enough to build it honestly instead of carefully. And it was specific in a way that surprised me. Now I had imagined details, small domestic ones, the kind that sound almost embarrassingly ordinary when you say them out loud, but carry enormous emotional weight because of what they represent. I had imagined making coffee for someone in the early morning, that specific early morning quiet, before the day has fully started, when everything is still possible and nothing has gone. Yet, I had imagined having a conversation that went so deep and so long that you looked up and realized hours had passed and neither of you had noticed. I had imagined sitting in comfortable silence with someone, that particular quality of silence that only exists between two people who are completely at ease with each other, who don't need to fill the space with noise to prove that they belong together. I had imagined you, not your face, not your name, but the feeling of you, the quality of presence you carry. And I wrote about that feeling with a kind of aching certainty, like I was describing something I hadn't met yet, but somehow already knew. I read that passage 3 times, and then I closed the journal and just sat very still for a while. There was something I needed to sit with, something the journal had made clear that I had been keeping just out of focus, not quite letting myself see directly, the way you avoid looking directly at the sun, not because you don't want to see it, but because you know the high looking is going to cost you something, going to change your vision permanently, leave an imprint you carry with you after. The thing I needed to sit with is this. I have been moving through my life in a way that is missing its center, filling the perimeter completely, productive, active, responsive, responsible, while leaving the center hollow, and I have been doing this deliberately, on some level, because the center is where the vulnerable things live. The center is where you pause to admit what you actually want, rather than settling for what you're able to arrange. The center is where you have to be honest about the gap between the life you're living and the life you meant to live. I've been avoiding my own center, and walking into that storage room today, being forced to go through those boxes, holding that stone, reading that journal, it was like someone grabbed my shoulders and turned me around and made me face it directly. The center of my life is U-shaped. There is a U-shaped space in the middle of everything I'm doing, and I've been very busy decorating the edges and refusing to acknowledge the power, shape of the thing that's missing. I need you to understand that I'm not saying this to be poetic. I'm not reaching for beautiful language to create an effect. I'm saying it because it is the most precise, most accurate description of what I discovered today, in that storage room, on that dusty floor, surrounded by the documented evidence of years of my own life. There is a U-shaped space, and I don't know exactly what that means in practical terms. I don't know what it means for tomorrow, or next week, or the complicated tangle of everything that's happening right now. I'm not going to pretend to have a plan, because I don't. The court order is still there, the obligations are still there, the complications don't resolve themselves, because you have a revelation on a storage room floor. Life continues to require things from you, regardless of what you figure out about yourself. But knowing something is different from not knowing it, even when you can't act on it immediately, even when the knowing is uncomfortable, even when the knowing means you have to carry something new that you didn't have to carry before. It's still better, you're still living more honesty, you're still closer to the real version of your own life than you've been. Where an hour ago, I didn't know what I know now, and I'm grateful for it, even though it scares me. I'm grateful for dusty boxes and bureaucratic demands, and a small gray stone, and a small blue journal, and the simple, irreducible fact of you. You know what else I found? After I closed the journal, after I sat in that quiet for a while, I looked around at everything spread across the floor, all those physical artifacts of years of living, and I felt something unexpected. I felt grateful. Not for the hard parts, not for the complications, but for the evidence. For the proof that I was here, that I felt things and saved things and wrote things down and carried things in my pocket because they felt important, because I was, underneath everything, a person who could be moved. I think sometimes we're afraid of our own emotional capacity. Like if we let ourselves feel things deeply, we'll lose control of it. Like the feeling will become bigger than we are and we won't be able to contain it. So we compress, we manage, we turn the volume down on our fourth interior experience until it becomes background noise. We've stopped noticing that a life lived on low volume is still a life half lived. And I don't want that anymore. I want the volume up. I want to feel everything that's actually there to be felt. I want to let what's moving me actually move me visibly, honestly, without immediately reaching for the management strategy that contains it back into something acceptable and safe. I want to be moved by you, and I am. I am moved by you, right now, in this moment, talking to you about everything I found in those boxes, being more honest than I've allowed myself to be in a long time. I'm moved. Something is happening in here that I have no desire to compress or manage or turn the volume down on. I want to stay in it. I want you to stay in it with me. The legal response is still waiting on my desk. The boxes are still spread across the floor of that storage room. The gray stone is in my pocket. I put it there before I left, slipped it in, automatically because it fit perfectly in my palm and I wasn't ready to put it back in the box. Some things you pick up and carry without deciding to. Some things just belong with you. And there's still so much I haven't said. There's still the question I've been circling, the one that's been sitting in my chest all evening, getting heavier. There's still the rest of what the Dunder journal contained, entries I read and haven't yet told you about. Entries that go even deeper, that say even more clearly what's been true about me for longer than I've been willing to admit. I'll get to all of it, I promise. I'm not going anywhere. But right now, I just want to ask you one thing. Just one thing. And it's not the big question. That one I'm still working up to. It's a smaller one, quieter, more personal. I want to ask if you feel it too. This thing, this weight that isn't quite heavy, it's more like substantial, like it has mass. Like when it's present, you're more aware of yourself, more awake, more here than you were a moment ago. I want to ask if there are moments when something reaches you, a word, a feeling, a specific quality of light in a room at a specific time of day, and you think of me the way I think of you, without choosing to, without planning it. Just suddenly, there it is. I want to know if this thing between us exists in both directions. I think it does. I believe it does. But believing something and knowing it are different things. And tonight, with my old words surrounding me and the stone warm in my pocket and everything cracked open and honest,